Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Tonight, we're getting a break from the wet weather, but a new storm is on the horizon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Today, the city of San Diego lifted the evacuation warning for storm-impacted areas, but more warnings may be coming soon. KPBS reporter John Carroll has the latest on next week's storms that are expected to dump rain on the county for days.
The memories of last week's downpour are still fresh, but more rain is just around the corner. A lot more rain.
Sometime on Monday becoming heavy, and that rain could last into Tuesday. It could stall over our region and basically give us almost a couple days of continuous rain. And then we really don't see the light at the end of the tunnel until maybe Wednesday.
And Alex Tardy says it's entirely possible next Wednesday could be a day like today with on and off showers. The problem is we really haven't had a chance to dry out since last week's deluge.
Now that we have two events, 22nd and yesterday, it's safe to say the ground is near saturation.
Tardy says we're looking at 2 to 3 inches falling between Monday and Wednesday, but if you think that's a lot, wait till you hear what's expected for the mountains.
We could be looking at 3 to 6 inches of rain in a couple days in all of our foothill mountain areas, and that means that water's got to run off, is what that means. And so not only will we have local rain, we'll have a lot of water running off.
With the caveat that the longer out the forecast, the less accurate it is, Tardy says it does appear that once this next atmospheric river runs dry, we'll have a chance to dry out.
Probably 7 days type of thing, a full week of break. And the first indication of any other storm would be the end of February.
In the meantime, all eyes will be on the sky as the first full week of February looks to be a wet one for soggy San Diego. John Carroll, KPBS News.
And your full weather forecast is coming up in a few minutes. We have more on the incoming storm as well as safety reminders and links to other resources on our website. Just go to kpbs.org/weather. The first round of record rainfall last week left significant damage at some campuses in the La Mesa Spring Valley School District. Bancroft Elementary remains closed for major repairs. Now, KPBS education reporter MG Perez tells us there was a direct helping hand today from the state.
Thank you. Great to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These displaced students from Bancroft Elementary had an unexpected visit this morning from Tony Thurmond, California State Superintendent, and an unexpected chance to tell him what happened that horrible day almost 2 weeks ago.
Came out, like the whole school was flooded, and we had like walk through, and then some kids fell and stuff.
Were people being calm?
No.
450 Bancroft students and 16 teachers are now having classes here at nearby Spring Valley Academy. The superintendent came to town to tour damage and see recovery efforts, and to appoint these students as very special helpers.
I'm going to name you all as ambassadors to help other students if there's ever something going on.
It feels cool to actually meet like someone big and like for him to actually announce me as an ambassador, so I feel like proud of myself.
Nathan Saucedo is the Bancroft principal helping his students adjust.
Amazing job just making sure that everyone on campus feels welcomed and they feel supported, and they're just we're creating that environment just like we did at Bancroft.
As students continue to adjust to their temporary classrooms here at Spring Valley Academy, a mile and a half away, the restoration and renovation work continues at their home school, where the damage from the record rains is still visible. And district officials say the repairs are moving ahead of schedule. Even with rain still falling, workers have torn out much of the water-damaged flooring and dried and disinfected the walls and structures still standing. School supplies and books salvaged from the flood are sealed in heavy plastic for students when they return. By Monday, 25 classrooms could be ready to have new carpet installed.
Between flooding and fires, our schools have had to deal with a new normal of disasters that disrupt class time. And so everything that we can do to prepare is the key.
That includes the appointment of the state's newest safe school ambassadors, who are some of the youngest survivors of this latest history lesson in real time.
I just want to thank you all for being ambassadors to help your peers get beyond it. Let's have a round of applause for our new ambassadors.
MG Perez, KPBS News.
The Poway Unified School District Superintendent has been put on paid administrative leave effective immediately. The Board of Trustees says Superintendent Marianne Phelps is on leave because of a sensitive point in the investigation of harassment allegations by students against her. Phelps is accused of bullying and intimidating students on the Del Norte High School softball team for not clapping loudly enough for her daughter, who's also on the team, during an awards banquet last May. Phelps has said she did nothing wrong. The San Diego region has tried a number of different temporary solutions for homelessness, from a large shelter in Golden Hall to rows of tents in parking lots near Balboa Park. Now, as KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer shows us, the county is offering another option.
The County of San Diego has about 100 new pallet shelter cabins ready to house the unsheltered population in San Diego.
And it's incredibly cost efficient. I mean, one of the ones behind me is just about $19,000 per unit.
County Supervisor Tara Lawson-Reamer says $1.5 million has been set aside to purchase, deliver, and assemble the sleeping cabins on site. Now, the job is to find those sites and service providers.
We got the homes here, we got the funding, and we're just looking for the community partners who can step up and run some shelters.
Most cabins sleep 1 or 2 people. They have storage space, a locking door, and charging outlets, and some even have a bathroom. Pallet CEO Amy King says they're structures that are sturdy and can be set up quickly.
We want people to use these products temporarily for 3, 6 months, a year, whatever they need, get stabilized, get working with service providers, build the community relationships they need to succeed, and then move on to permanent housing.
She says the idea is to set them up in a small village-like fashion.
We have safe sleeping sites, we have safe parkings, but something where somebody can actually get covered in, and it brings the strain down on the shelters as well.
Pastor Shane O'Garo and his Church of Salvation do regular homeless outreach. He says a roof and 4 walls can make a world of difference for people otherwise living in a car or on the street. And this type of shelter provides a sense of safety that congregate shelters often lack.
You just have that sense of privacy and that sense of dignity, because now it sets you on the way to go back into your own place. It's kind of like a stepping stone.
Any organization that wants to use the pallet shelters will have to cover the cost of operations. Lawson-Reamer says next week she'll introduce a policy to make county land available for emergency homeless shelter solutions, which could include the pallet shelters. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
A stronger than expected jobs report might delay an interest rate cut planned for next month. SDSU's Miro Kopik tells us about the latest economic numbers in the Friday Business Report.
It was a tremendous jobs report. It beat expectations by double. 353,000 jobs were created in the economy. The unemployment rate stayed at 3.7%. I feel like a broken record. It's 24 straight months of unemployment levels of under 4%. The big sector was healthcare and social assistance with over 100,000 jobs. And so what does this mean for the Fed? This week, the Fed decided to hold their rates firm. And a lot of investors, until the jobs report today, were expecting and hoping that the Fed would kind of cut rates in March. It's it's going to look like, and the Fed signaled that they're going to wait probably till May or June because they're still above the inflation rate, which we're going to find out more about next week. From an economic standpoint, inflation is kind of moderating, the labor market is strong, and the economy is strong. So the Fed is going to hold off now, but they're going to keep their eye on what's happening with inflation, and I think investors are just going to have to wait for a few more months.
It's Black History Month, and state lawmakers just announced a package of bills which aim to make good on the proposals made by California's first-in-the-nation reparations task force last summer. Julian Glover spoke with two of the legislators and has this report.
Reparations is not charity. It's not a handout. It's not a gift. It is what was promised. It's what is owed, and it's something that is 160 years overdue to African Americans who built this country.
The state of California is now one step closer to making good on that promise to repair Black Californians harmed by the legacy of slavery and anti-Black policies in the century and a half since emancipation. The Legislative Black Caucus is announcing a package of more than a dozen reparations bills, the first step in making Black Californians whole.
I mean, I'm hoping that we'll all be successful. I'm realistic enough to know that there's going to be some setbacks.
State Senator Stephen Bradford of Southern California is one of the Legislative Black Caucus members behind the reparations package. Bradford is one of two legislative leaders who served on California's first-in-the-nation reparations task force. Assemblymember Reginald Jones Sawyer is the other.
We have this momentous task of trying to get legislation and budget recommendations done. We're looking at probably a 5-year strategy on how to do this.
The bills come from the more than 100 recommendations released by the task force last summer at the conclusion of 2 years of work. The package includes in part bills to expand access to career education and financial aid in redline communities, prison reform, improved access to healthy food, and a formal apology from the state.
In the Assembly chamber, in the Senate respectively, do you think that there is the will there, enough votes to make this happen?
I think we got work to do. And be real honest with you, we have to do a lot of work with our members and our colleagues to get them there.
I want to talk about the economic calculus of it all. Obviously, as California faces a significant deficit right now, how do you make the case to your colleagues to say that we need to put some money aside?
It's going to be a tough year because of the budget, but I've been here at the toughest times, and we found ways to fund those things that we said were a priority.
As for the Black Californians like Andrea Jordan, who can draw their lineage back to an enslaved African brought to America, they say reparations is long overdue.
My great-grandfather was a sharecropper who had 17 children and worked from sunup to sundown and died with absolutely nothing. They took his land and created laws to keep his land, and he died with a frown on his face.
What do you think he would say about you being here today, making sure your voice is heard, carrying on his legacy?
I would hope that he would be proud and know that I stand on his shoulders, and there are no better shoulders to stand on.
Julian Glover reporting. There is a notable omission in the reparations package: direct cash payments for Black Californians that can trace their lineage back to enslaved African Americans. Meantime, California has agreed to a $2 billion settlement over learning losses during the COVID-19 pandemic. Parents and community groups successfully sued the state. They demanded more resources be used to help children who were underserved during pandemic closures, and that group is predominantly low-income Black and Latino students who are not bouncing back as fast as students in whiter, more affluent school districts.
We're between 800,000 and 1 million kids who had no digital access whatsoever. What does that mean? It doesn't mean they got bad education. It means they got no education. And hopefully this settlement will be a model for 49 other states.
The settlement money will go toward tutors, extended school days, mental health support, and more. Some teenaged playwrights will premiere their newest work in San Diego this weekend. They are high school students with a passion for telling stories, taking them from the page to the stage. KPBS education reporter MG Perez brings us a preview of their winning scripts.
Take your high mid gain down 2 clicks.
The sound and the lights are being set by professionals who work for the Playwrights Project, San Diego's nonprofit arts education organization. But this performance showcases a series of short plays and a musical written by students still in high school, including Scripps Ranch senior Camille LaPlante.
Every playwright writes very differently. How much stage directions, like some are like, you're going to take a step this way, and others are like, do what you want, really.
Camille says her style is a little bit of both. Her play is titled Forgotten, about a girl and her grandfather who is quickly deteriorating into dementia.
We know each other. This is a photo of us.
Adult actors perform the original work, led by their professional director. But all the content comes from kids, a handful of them, chosen in the annual Playwrights Project contest, which this year included more than 200 entries from students across the county.
And I think we've allowed this written word and the spoken word to lose value over the years. So I hope that our playwrights realize their words mean so much, even if it just hits that one person in the audience.
So far this week, the audience has been students from several school districts on field trips here. There is the sad play and a couple of funny ones.
My name is Cruella, but you may call me Crow.
Ayushi Sheth and Isabella Vallejo are playwrights of Messy Revenge, starring a vindictive crow and his pigeon-brained sidekick.
You know what I'm really excited for, though? What?
They do such a good job of, like, bringing the characters to life and doing it, like, almost exactly how we kind of practiced it and envisioned it.
Captain, shouldn't you know the directions?
Shouldn't you, imbeciles? Oh, yeah. That was perfect.
Mia Roberts Blanco and her co-writer Cyrus King created The Spirit Treasure, also featuring a bird brain.
We were initially writing another play, but something I forgot. And then it got like too complicated, so we had to scrap the idea. And last minute to turn in a play, we wrote one of the pirates.
A community performance happens Saturday night on stage at the Kroc Center in Rolando Park, where the young playwrights will have their first public premiere.
Even if it's just here in San Diego, 10, 20 years from now, I can't wait till one of them is accepting their Tony and they're like, I did that because I started at Playwrights Project.
So I don't know why they're giving me the Tony Award. My name's not Tony, but thank you. I appreciate it.
She writes comedy, too. MG Perez, KPBS News.
Crews removed a giant pine tree that fell over, crashing into a family's home in North Park. The family of 6 was asleep at the time when the tree fell in the morning. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but the tree crushed their garage, their truck, and a branch went through their daughter's bedroom. Our media partner KGTV spoke with an arborist who says there are ways to spot if a tree is about to fall, especially after a storm.
Look at its vertical orientation. See which way, is it going straight up and down? Is it at a slight angle? Look at the top of the tree. Is that straight up and down? Is that growing at an angle? After the windstorm, if that has changed at all, if you feel like that's changed at all, definitely have a professional come out and look in the tree, because trees can experience partial failure in an oversaturated, windy environment.
SDG&E and AT&T crews began work on the power lines after the tree was removed.
Well, as quiet as a start as we'll have for the weekend. Wait till you see the tail end of the weekend into early next week. So that heavy rain returning very late Sunday, especially Sunday night into Monday. And along with that, we're going to be talking about some more gusty winds in the equation too. So a lot going on. A lingering shower here for tonight. Nothing overly heavy. Temperature-wise, we're dropping down into the upper 40s around Oceanside. 48 toward Chula Vista, and still some wind here over the higher terrain. Mount Laguna down to 29. Wind advisories out here right into early Saturday morning, roughly right around that 4 o'clock time frame. All right, and also looking at some high surf advisories out through Saturday morning here too, running right along the shore all the way down toward Chula Vista. So short-term aside, let's talk about one more quiet day here as we work our way to tomorrow. San Diego, Oceanside, Chula Vista, Ramona, Borrego Springs, all looking at some sunshine coming in. But I want to show you what's coming up down the road. And the first wave of precipitation stays off toward the north here as we go throughout to Saturday. We will see some increasing cloudiness. And then on Sunday, we'll start to see that precipitation edge its way in our direction, but it's going to take some time here. Once it moves in later on, again, Sunday night and into Monday, it's going to be heavy, and we're talking about a high impact here, again, to lives and property as we talk about the potential here for flash flooding, power outages. Yeah, we're going to see a lot of rain coming down. How much are we looking at? Once you work your way toward Oceanside points north, there is the potential to see more than 4 inches of rain. Most spots will see 2 or 3 inches of rain. That's a lot of rain considering we've seen more than double the historical average rainfall so far this year. So we're already adding on to a saturated ground, and that rain's going to linger here right into Tuesday, along with some cooler air coming in at the coast. Over the interior valleys, the majority of the rain coming in, again, later on Sunday night into Monday and Tuesday. Still could see some showers lingering into Wednesday. Not a super cool system coming in. Mountainous terrain, looking at wet weather as we work our way through Monday. The potential here for some even colder air and windier conditions as we go into midweek. And as we talk about the deserts, we're also going to see the wet weather making its move in as we head into early week. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic.
Carl Weathers, a football player turned actor, died today. Weathers played football at San Diego State University, then with the Oakland Raiders before turning to acting. He rose to fame in the role of boxing champion Apollo Creed in the Rocky movies with Sylvester Stallone. Weathers went on to star in dozens of movies and TV shows, including Predator, Happy Gilmore, Toy Story 4, and The Mandalorian. Carl Weathers was 76 years old. San Diego Opera opens its first grand opera of the season tonight with a bold new production of Mozart's Don Giovanni. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando takes us behind the scenes to see how this bad boy of opera is being brought to life.
Mozart's Don Giovanni is based on the notorious womanizer Don Juan, which led director Kyle Lang to start thinking about new ways to present the bad boy of opera.
It really came up how Giovanni is such a rock star, or we think of him as such a rock star in the repertoire. So that kind of stemmed into, well, what if we really think about rock concert lighting?
And dressing Giovanni in a leather jacket. At Tuesday's dress rehearsal, San Diego Opera General Director David Bennett enjoyed pointing out how the stage was also being transformed.
We have these black curtains that sort of hide the lighting instruments. We're actually taking those away, so you'll see the lighting instruments. We have haze, a form of vapor, that will be at the top of the theater, so we'll see these beautiful columns of light coming through in a way that's very arresting. So the architecture that we see on stage is actually made of light and projections and costumes.
Instead of fixed massive sets, that means the action can be more fluid and scene changes can be faster with lighting and projection redefining the space. But it's also cheaper.
It does sort of start off as a way to deal with cost, but it also is a new way to embrace the way we produce opera.
Another practical decision that yields artistic perks is placing the orchestra on stage rather than in a pit hidden from the audience.
This is actually how opera started, was orchestra on stage.
That way, audiences can clearly see conductor Yves Abel and the musicians of San Diego Symphony.
There's an energy that comes when you see the workings of what happens around a production, you know, and seeing the orchestra on stage, it kind of allows you to see the organs of the mechanism working together rather than just the skin or the makeup on the outside. You really get a more visceral experience by seeing not just the singers working, but really seeing the conductor working.
The conductor and the musicians become characters helping to drive the story. The use of contemporary costumes and props help a modern audience connect to the centuries-old story.
This story, as old as it is, the psychology of it, we're still like this today. It's about the human condition.
So don't be surprised to see someone using a cell phone to check Tinder or someone doing a line of cocaine at a wild party.
I wanted to kind of show that, like, there's many pieces in the repertoire that people think of being like, oh, that's going to be like Renaissance period clothing, and like that the story lives in that world. This story does not just live in that world. This story is timeless.
But some things are changing for attendees.
We looked at our existing audience from last year and we realized we could accommodate them in 2 dates, 2 performances. And because the cost of producing opera is so expensive right now, sort of the fiscally responsible thing to do is to not overproduce expensive opera. We should sort of look at what our demand is and deal with supply and demand. So that's really where this decision of reducing our number of performances came from.
So instead of having 4 performances partially full, Don Giovanni is looking at 2 almost sold-out performances in the 2,800-seat Civic Theater this weekend.
So people are coming, and so it gives me hope that I think in future seasons we'll be able to add performances back as we regain our audiences. And Don Giovanni is something clearly people are wanting to see.
You can enjoy this fresh take on an opera classic with performances of Don Giovanni this weekend. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Previs Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.